My wife's gym harasser laughed when I told him to stop. He stopped laughing when he got banned and served a restraining order. My name is Nate, and I work as an operations analyst at a regional bank. It is not glamorous work, and it is definitely not exciting work, but it pays the mortgage, and I am good at it. Most of my day is spent looking at spreadsheets, reviewing reports, and flagging anything that does not add up. Patterns are my job. I find them. I notice when something repeats, when something shifts, when one small detail connects to another detail that everyone else missed. I am telling you that because it matters later. My wife Jess and I have been together for 9 years and married for 6. Jess has always been an early riser. Her alarm goes off at 5:15 in the morning, and by 5:45 she is already at the gym. She goes 4 days a week, Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, and Saturday, and she has kept that routine for years. It is the same gym every time, a mid-sized place about 12 minutes from our house. She knows the staff. She knows the regulars. She knows exactly what she wants to do the moment she walks through the door. Her workouts are organized steady and almost scientific. She likes it that way. I go to the same gym, but I go later. My usual time is around 6:30 in the evening after work, so our schedules do not overlap. They never have. Jess does her thing in the morning, I do mine at night. It has always worked for us. About 4 months ago, Jess came home from her Tuesday morning workout and mentioned, almost like it was an afterthought, that some guy at the gym had tried to chat her up. At first she said he seemed friendly enough. He asked if she needed a spot. He made small talk about the playlist. She told him she was married and showed him her ring. She always wears her ring, even at the gym. I honestly wish she would leave it in the car, but that is a different conversation. She figured that would be the end of it. It was not. By the following Thursday, he was back. Same approach. He asked what she was training that day. She gave him a one-word answer and put her earbuds back in. He hung around for another minute before drifting off. Jess told me about it again, but she did not seem especially bothered at that point. She said he was probably just lonely and bad at reading signals. I told her, okay, but keep me posted. And honestly, at first, I did not think much of it. Gyms are full of guys who try to strike up conversations. Most of them take the hint after a clear rejection. I figured this was probably one of those awkward, annoying, but ultimately harmless situations. I thought it would be over. The next week, it happened again. He found her during her warm-up on the bikes and started talking to her. This time, Jess was more direct. She told him she was not interested in conversation, that she was there to work out, and that she had already told him she was married. He held up his hands like he was the innocent party and said something along the lines of, "Whoa, I'm just being friendly." Then he walked away. It was the classic move. Act like the other person is overreacting so they feel guilty for having a boundary. I asked Jess to describe him, just so I could have a picture in my head. She said he was in his mid-30s, average height, brownish hair, and always wearing the same rotation of tank tops, like he had bought a 6-pack of them at Costco. No tattoos that she could see. Nothing really distinctive. Just a guy. The kind of guy you would not notice in a grocery store. This is where I should explain something about Jess. She is not someone who needs rescuing. She has handled creeps before. She has handled pushy people at work. She has handled her own family drama without flinching. She is tough, and she wanted to handle this herself, which I respected completely. I was not about to storm into the gym and make a scene on her behalf when she had not asked me to. But even then, I could see the pattern forming. By week 4, he was waiting for her near the water fountain. He was not working out. He was not filling a bottle. He was just standing there like he was waiting for a bus that only arrived when Jess walked by. She passed him, and he said something like, "You look amazing today." She did not respond. She kept walking. Then he followed her. Not closely enough to make a dramatic scene, but he moved to a machine near wherever she went. Twice during that same session, she switched to a different area, and within a few minutes, he wandered over to something nearby. Not directly next to her, but close enough that it was obvious. Jess told me about that incident differently from the earlier ones. She was not dismissive anymore. She was annoyed. Really annoyed. She said she had actually cut her workout short by about 15 minutes because she could not focus. She said she felt like she was being watched and it threw off her whole routine. That word sat with me for the rest of the night. Watched. I was still thinking about it when I went to bed. I have always been a light sleeper, and that night I kept running through possibilities in my head. What if he did it again? What if he became more aggressive? What if Jess was downplaying how uncomfortable she really was because she did not want me to worry? I asked if she wanted me to come with her next time. She said no. She said that if it happened again, she would talk to the front desk. I said okay, and I meant it. I was not going to push. Week 5 came, and he did not show. Jess thought maybe he had moved on or switched gyms. I hope so too. We did not talk about it much that week. We had dinner at her sister's house on Saturday, and her sister made this insane baked ziti. I mean, aggressively good. The kind of baked ziti where you go back for thirds and feel absolutely no shame. For a few days, the whole gym thing faded into the background. Then, week 6 hit. Jess came home on a Tuesday morning, and I could tell right away that something was off. She was quieter than usual. She did not stretch in the living room like she normally did after a workout. She just went straight to the shower. I gave her some space, then asked her about it over breakfast. She told me he was back, and this time he had touched her. She said she was doing cable rows when he came up behind her, put his hand on her lower back, and said something about her form being off. She stepped away immediately. He laughed it off like it was nothing. She told him, "Don't touch me," loud enough that a couple of people looked over. He raised his eyebrows and said, "Relax, I was trying to help." I am not going to pretend I was calm when she told me that. I was furious. My jaw tightened. My hands were flat on the table, and for about 10 seconds, I did not say anything because I did not trust what was going to come out of my mouth. But I did not blow up. I sat there and listened. Jess said she went to the front desk after it happened, but the manager was not in yet. It was barely 6 in the morning, so she spoke to the kid working the counter, who said he would pass it along. Real reassuring. I told Jess I wanted to adjust my schedule. I said I would start going in the mornings with her. Not to hover, not to play bodyguard. I said I wanted to be there in case this guy escalated, and I promised I would keep my distance unless something happened. She thought about it for a minute, then agreed. So that Thursday, I went with her, 5:45 in the morning, which, by the way, is inhumane. I do not know how Jess does that 4 days a week. My alarm went off at 5:10, and I genuinely considered whether the whole thing was worth it. It was. But I need it on the record that waking up that early is brutal. I set up on the opposite side of the floor, near the free weights. Jess went to her normal area by the machines and cable station. I could see her from where I was, and she could see me. But to anyone else watching, we did not look like we were together. We did not even drive together. I took my own car and walked in about 5 minutes after her. I even wore a hat I did not normally wear, which in hindsight was probably unnecessary, but I was not thinking about fashion at 5 in the morning. The regular, which was what Jess had started calling him, and honestly it fit because this dude showed up like clockwork, was not there that Thursday. I did my full workout. Jess did hers. We drove home separately. Everything was fine. Then Saturday came. Same plan. I got to the gym at 5:15 and posted up by the dumbbells. Jess was already on a bike, and sure enough, around 6:15 he walked in. He looked exactly like she had described him. Average-looking guy, probably mid-30s, wearing a gray tank top. It looked like the same gray tank top both times I ever saw him, or at least close enough that I remember it that way. He had this walk like he owned the place. He was not physically big or intimidating, but he had that vibe, the "I am a big deal in my own head" vibe. He got on a treadmill for maybe 10 minutes, then migrated toward the machines right near Jess. I watched. I did not move. Jess was doing lateral pull-downs with her earbuds in. He walked up behind her and said something. I could not hear it from where I was, but I saw her take out one earbud and shake her head. He kept talking. She looked straight ahead and did not respond. Then he reached over and touched her arm just above the elbow. It was a light grip, like he was trying to get her attention. She pulled her arm away, clear as day. He stayed right there. He did not move back. He did not take the hint. He was still talking. I set the dumbbells down and walked across the floor. I did not rush. I did not make a scene. I walked like I was headed to the water fountain, which happened to be right past where they were standing. But when I reached them, I stopped. I looked at him and said word for word, because I had been running it through my head for 3 days. She's told you no multiple times. This is the last time. He looked at me like I had just spoken French. Then he looked at Jess. Then he looked back at me. And then he laughed. Not a nervous laugh. A full, chest-out, are you kidding me laugh? He said something like, "Who are you, her dad?" I did not answer. I did not need to. I turned to Jess and said, "Let's go talk to the front desk." She nodded. We walked to the counter together. The regular went back to his machine. I could feel him watching us the whole way. This time, the manager was there. His name was Phil, mid-40s. He had been running the place for a couple of years, and I had talked to him a few times during my evening sessions. He knew me by name. I told him what had been happening, the repeated approaches, the touching, the way Jess had clearly told him no, the fact that she had already reported it once and nothing had come of it. Jess backed everything up. She was calm, specific, and detailed. She is always good under pressure like that. Phil pulled up the membership records and asked us to describe the guy. We did. He said he would review the camera footage from the floor and talk to the staff member who had been working the morning Jess first reported it. He also said he would file a formal incident report and gave us a copy. I asked if we could also file a written complaint separate from whatever internal process they had. Phil said yes and handed us a form. We filled it out, both of us. I kept a photo of it on my phone. I also asked politely if the gym had a harassment policy posted anywhere. Phil pointed to a sign near the locker rooms. I walked over and read it. It was standard stuff, but it was exactly what we needed. Unwanted physical contact, repeated. Unwanted approaches after being asked to stop, and intimidation were all listed as grounds for membership revocation. Good enough. Within 3 days, Phil called Jess and told her they had reviewed the footage and were revoking the guy's membership. Done. No appeal. He was out. Phil said they had also flagged him in their system so he could not re-register under a different name. I have no idea how that actually works, but I appreciated the thought. Jess went back to her normal schedule. I stayed on the morning sessions for another week just to be safe, then shifted back to evenings. For a little while, things felt normal again. Jess was stretching in the living room. She was playing her morning playlist in the kitchen while making eggs. Everything settled for about a week. Then, one Wednesday evening, I had just finished my own workout. Back and biceps, nothing special. I was walking to my car in the parking lot around 7:45. It was still a little light outside. And there he was, the regular, sitting on the hood of a car 2 spots away from mine. Not his car, someone else's car. Just sitting there, looking at his phone. I stopped walking for a second. He looked up, and for maybe 2 seconds, we just stared at each other. He did not say anything. He did not move. He just looked at me with an expression I can only describe as flat. Not angry, not smiling, not scared, just flat. I got into my car and drove home. I did not say a word to him, but the second I pulled into my driveway, I texted Jess and told her what happened. She did not panic. Jess is not a panicker. But she asked me the same question I was already asking myself. Why was he there? His membership had been revoked. He had no reason to be in that parking lot. And how did he know which car was mine? Or did he know? Was it just a coincidence? I do not believe in coincidences, not when there is already a pattern. I drove by the gym the next day on my way home from work. He was not there. I drove by on Friday too. Nothing. Saturday morning, Jess went to the gym at her normal time, and I followed 10 minutes behind in a separate car again. No sign of him. I started to think maybe it was nothing. Maybe he had been meeting someone there. Maybe he was picking someone up. Maybe he just liked sitting on random cars like some kind of parking lot gargoyle. People are weird. It does not always mean something. Then, the next Wednesday, exactly 1 week later, Jess texted me at 6:03 in the morning. She had just pulled into the gym parking lot, and his car was there. She recognized it. Same dark blue sedan with a dent on the rear bumper and one of those little air freshener trees hanging from the mirror. He was sitting in the driver's seat, parked 3 spots from where she normally parked. She did not get out. She stayed in her car and texted me. I told her to drive to the gas station across the street and wait there. Then I called the gym. Phil was not there yet, but I left a message and told them exactly what was happening. Then I got in my car and drove to the gym. By the time I got there, maybe 22 minutes later, because I hit every red light on Route 9, his car was gone. Jess was still at the gas station. I picked her up. She was fine, just irritated, and we went home. That was it for me. I was done waiting. I sat down at the kitchen table with my laptop and did what I do best. I organized information. I made a timeline. Every incident, every date, every interaction. I included what was said, what was done, who witnessed it, and how the gym responded at each step. I attached the photo of the written complaint form. I wrote down the dates and approximate times of both parking lot sightings. I included the fact that his membership had already been revoked when he appeared there again. I treated it like any other pattern that needed to be documented. That afternoon, I called the non-emergency police line. I explained the situation. I told them about the harassment at the gym, the membership revocation, and the 2 parking lot incidents afterward. The officer on the phone asked if there had been any direct threats. I said no. He asked if there had been any physical violence. I said the guy had touched my wife's back and arm without consent multiple times, and she had told him to stop each time. The officer said they could send someone out to take a statement, or we could come to the station. I went to the station and brought the timeline, the photo of the complaint form, and Jess. She gave her own statement. I gave mine. The whole thing took about an hour and a half, which felt long. But the officer we spoke to was decent. He asked good questions. He listened. He took notes. He did not dismiss anything. He read through the timeline I had made and actually commented that it was one of the most organized complaints he had seen. I told him I did this kind of thing for a living, just with different data. He almost smiled at that. He said that, based on what we had described, there might not be enough yet for an arrest, but the pattern of behavior, especially the parking lot appearances after the gym, gave us a strong basis for a civil restraining order. He also said that if the guy showed up again, we should call 911 immediately and reference the report number. He gave us his card and said we could reach out if anything else happened before the court date. We went home and I looked up the process for filing a restraining order in our state. It was not as complicated as I expected, mostly paperwork, a filing fee, and then waiting for a hearing date. The forms were straightforward. At least, if you have ever filled out anything government-related and working at a bank, I have filled out plenty. Jess and I talked about it over dinner. At first, she was not sure. She said she did not want to make it a bigger thing than it needed to be. She said maybe the police report would scare him off and that would be the end of it. And I understood where she was coming from. Nobody wants to go to court. Nobody wants to sit across from someone who has been making their life uncomfortable and relive the whole thing in front of a judge. But I told her it was already a big thing. This guy had been asked to stop multiple times. He had been banned from the gym, and he was still showing up. That was not someone who respected boundaries. That was someone testing how far he could push. Jess agreed, not right away. She went quiet for a few minutes and finished eating. Then she looked at me and said, "Okay, file it." So I filed the petition the next day. I printed everything, the timeline, the complaint form, screenshots of the texts between Jess and me on the mornings of the parking lot incidents. I also went back to the gym and asked Phil if he could provide a written statement confirming the harassment complaints and the membership revocation. Phil said he would check with the gym's ownership group first, but he would try to get us something. He came through. 2 days later, he emailed me a formal letter on the gym's letterhead, confirming that a member had been banned from the facility because of repeated harassment complaints from a female member and her spouse. The letter did not name him, but I had his name from the police report. It included the date of the revocation and referenced their internal incident report. I attached everything to the petition and submitted it. The waiting part was probably the hardest. You file the paperwork, and then you just sit there. The court has to schedule a hearing. The other party has to be served. Meanwhile, you are just living your life and hoping this guy does not show up at your house. Jess went back to her morning sessions, but she started going at 6:15 instead of 5:45. She said she wanted to make sure more people were around. I went with her on Saturdays. We were careful but not paranoid, At least, that is what I kept telling myself. It took about 11 days for the temporary restraining order to come through. The court granted it based on the filing alone. Jess and I did not even have to appear for that part. It was a temporary order, good for about 3 weeks until the full hearing. The terms were simple. He had to stay at least 200 feet away from both of us, our home and the gym. No contact of any kind. He was served on a Friday. I know because the process server confirmed it, and I got a notification from the court. The full hearing happened about 3 weeks later. Jess and I both appeared. We had a lawyer with us, Jess's cousin actually. He mainly worked in corporate law, but he knew enough family law to walk us through the process, and he did it as a favor. We took him and his wife out to a really nice Italian place afterward to say thanks. I had this ridiculous mushroom risotto that I am honestly still thinking about. The regular showed up with no lawyer. That surprised me. I figured he would at least have someone there to represent him, but no, it was just him. He wore a button-down shirt that was slightly too big for him, like he had borrowed it from someone with wider shoulders. He sat at the table across from us, and for the first time, he looked smaller than he ever had at the gym. I do not know if it was the fluorescent lights, or the courtroom, or the fact that there were actual consequences in the room with him, but the confidence was gone. He just looked like a guy who did not want to be there. The judge reviewed everything. Our lawyer walked through the timeline, the repeated approaches, the physical contact, the gym ban, and the parking lot appearances. He submitted the gym's letter and the police report. Jess testified. She was clear, direct, and steady. She did not exaggerate. She did not get overly emotional. She just laid out what happened. Then the regular got his chance to respond. He said he was just being friendly and that people were too sensitive these days. He said he had no idea Jess was uncomfortable, even though she had literally told him, "Don't touch me," in front of other members. He said the parking lot was a public space and that he had every right to be there. The judge asked him why he was in the parking lot of a gym he had been banned from on 2 separate occasions, one of them at 6 in the morning. He did not have a good answer for that. The judge granted the full restraining order. 1 year, 200 feet from both of us, our home, our vehicles, and the gym. No contact, no communication through third parties, no showing up at places he knew we frequented. A violation would become a criminal matter. The regular looked at the table the whole time the judge was reading the terms. He did not make eye contact with me or Jess. He did not say a word. We walked out of the courtroom and into the hallway. Jess did not say anything for a minute. We took the elevator down, walked out through the front entrance, and stood on the courthouse steps for a second. It was one of those perfect late morning moments where the sun hits you and you suddenly realize you have been holding your breath for weeks. She squeezed my hand in the parking lot, but she did not say much. We drove home in separate cars because I had to go back to work. I had taken a half day, and my inbox was definitely going to be a disaster. When she got home, she texted me a single thumbs-up emoji. That was enough. It has been about 5 weeks since the restraining order was granted. No sightings, no contact, no parking lot cameos. The gym has been quiet. Jess is back to her 5:45 schedule, and she says she actually looks forward to it again, which is something she had not said in a while. I shifted back to my evening sessions about 2 weeks after the hearing. It felt weird being back on my old schedule, like readjusting to a time zone after a long trip. The first night, I walked in around 6:30. The gym was half empty, the way it always is on a Tuesday evening, and it felt like a completely different planet compared to the 5:45 crowd. Phil gave me a nod the first night I came back. He did not say anything about it, just a nod. I nodded back and went to the squat rack. That was that. A couple of the morning regulars, the real ones, not him, apparently asked Jess if everything was okay after they noticed the guy had disappeared. She just said he was no longer a member and left it there. One of the women from the morning crew, a lady named Carol, who has been going to that gym since it opened, told Jess she had noticed the guy following her around weeks earlier and had almost said something herself. Part of me wishes she had. But I also get it. Nobody wants to get involved. Things at home are good now, normal. Jess still makes fun of me for going to the police station in basketball shorts because I had come straight from the gym and did not think to change. She has a point. I must have looked ridiculous sitting in that plastic chair with my gym bag between my feet, giving a formal statement about harassment. Not my finest visual moment. I have thought a lot about whether we did the right thing. Not filing the restraining order, I am certain about that. I mean the timing.
Should I have stepped in earlier? Should I have gone to the gym with Jess after the first or second incident?
Instead of waiting until she was ready, I go back and forth. Jess says no. She says she needed to handle it herself first, and that my stepping in when I did was the right call. I trust her judgment, but there is still a part of me that wonders if those weeks of letting it play out were weeks she should never have had to deal with. I still drive by the gym on my way home sometimes, even on days when I do not work out. I just glance at the parking lot. I have not seen the blue sedan. I probably will not stop doing that for a while. Maybe that is paranoid. Maybe that is just what happens when someone messes with the person you care about most. I do not know. I checked with our lawyer cousin about what happens when the restraining order expires in about 11 months. He said we can petition to extend it if there has been any violation or if we have reason to believe the behavior would resume. I have already started a folder on my computer just in case. Old habits. And honestly, the thing that bugs me most is not even the harassment itself, though obviously that matters. It is the laugh. When I told him to stop, he laughed like it was funny. Like Jess was a joke. Like me standing there and telling him to back off was entertainment. That laugh lives in my head rent-free, and I think it always will. But at least now, there is a court order that says he has to keep it 200 feet away from us. So that is where we are. Quiet, stable, documented. The way I like it. If there is anything I learned from all of this, it is that documentation matters. Dates, times, what was said, who saw it, what action was taken. You do not need to wait for something dramatic to happen before you protect yourself. If someone repeatedly ignores your boundaries after you have been clear, that is already bad enough. You do not need a parking lot confrontation, a courtroom explosion, or some movie-style showdown to prove that something is wrong. A spreadsheet works just fine.